If you want to make games, you're probably going to need a game engine. I've been teaching game design for a very long time, more than 20 years, and you're basically these days faced with a choice between Godot and Unity. In this video I'm going to quickly go over some of the reasons why for your first game engine you want to probably choose Godot. Part 1 is feature parity. In the background I'm going to be making a really simple 3D character controller. In Godot there's a simple node called the character body 3D, and it's really easy to set up. There's one of these in Unity as well, and the character controller in Unity is just as easy to use as the character controller that you get in Godot. But this bit coming up here is the coolest part. When I add a script to it, there's an actual template that comes with the Godot game engine that as soon as you do it, it just gives you a very basic movement and it'll work straight out the box. So that's pretty cool all on its own, but the point of this is that there's feature parity. Something that's missing from Unity 3D is the fact that there's no 2D character controller, but there is in Godot. So in the background, here's me doing pretty much exactly the same process as I did for the 3D, but we're doing it with 2D. Instead of a character body 3D, as we used in the last example, this is a character body 2D, and it's exactly the same. You create a hierarchy of nodes, it gives you a default character controller script that just works like a platform controller straight out the box, and then when you're finished you've got, without writing a single line of code, an entire platform controller that just works as expected. So that's pretty cool. You get a very simple platform controller, but that's not all. The feature parity doesn't stop there. You also get cool things like tilemaps in both 2D and in 3D. So it's really easy to use the 2D tilemaps in Godot. It's a really simple setup. You've probably seen it before, but once you've created your tile set, all you need to do is add in the sprites that you want. You can break those up into different sections of this, and then you can literally just choose the selected section and you can paint on your scene, and you end up painting in any of the selected tiles. But did you know that it also comes in 3D? So there's a thing called a grid map node. I just borrowed some assets from kenny.nl and I created a grid map so that I'm able to, just like I would in 2D, I'm able to paint the 3D chunks. They're all the same size, so they fit together, and you set them up just like you set up a tile map, but you're painting them in 3D. Navigation is also a bit of an issue between 2D and 3D. So we've seen this in Unity and we can see this in Godot. I'm actually using a tile map here, but it's really easy to bake out the navigation just like you would do in Unity. It's easy to do this in Godot. Once you've created your navigation mesh, you can just simply click on the bake button and then it bakes the paths based on an agent. It's really easy and it works perfectly. There's even a very simple tick box for a debug mode. You can see the red line that shows the path as my little AI character moves across it. The cool thing about it too is that it's very, very little code in order to do this. This is the entire thing for pathfinding that you saw in that example. And did you know that it exists in 2D as well with the tile maps? So this is something that simply doesn't exist other than a third-party tool inside of Unity. This is a little bit fiddly to set up, but when it's done, you get exactly the same situation as you had in 3D. You get exactly the same thing in 2D. So you've even got the debug for the little red lines that shows where the path is, and the thing works straight out the box without any messing around. And the cool thing is that the code is equally small. It looks almost exactly the same as the 3D version. It's an agent 2D instead of an agent 3D. And the next major reason for choosing Godot is GDScript. Now GDScript is a really, really simple purpose-built language with a syntax that looks an awful lot like Python. So if you've come from one of the most popular languages to learn, which is Python, you should find it no difficulty to manage to pick up GDScript and understand the language. The language reference itself that you can see in the background here is only a few pages long, and it's a type of thing you can learn in a weekend rather than having to use C#. Now, don't get me wrong, C# is an absolutely awesome language, but it is a language that's used professionally in a lot of different things, and so in order to learn C#, you're going to have to commit quite a bit more time to learning it. It's a huge language and super powerful and totally awesome, but it is going to take you an awful lot longer. It's got a lot more syntax to it as well, so it doesn't look as neat and clean as you would get with a GDScript language. And because GDScript is such a small language, all of the help that you're going to need is integrated. You can just click straight on doc for any one of the nodes and it'll take you to the help inside of Godot without ever leaving, and click further to some of the tutorials and you'll go out to a web tutorial that's usually of really high quality. The same thing with clicking on any item inside of your code. You can control click on anything in your GDScript and it will just pop up with the help inside of Godot without ever having to leave. The next obvious reason is the editor. So everybody probably knows that the editor in Godot is really small and lightweight. Compared to Unity, you can see from the stats here that Godot is significantly smaller. I did a really simple test as well with a completely blank project using Unity and Godot, and you can see that the time to open was tiny compared to Unity, and the time to build was faster than I could press my stopwatch. Compared to Unity, it's a big saving in times. And you're probably already aware, but the mix of 2D and 3D in Unity can be a bit confusing for learners. Godot has a built-in 2D engine and a 3D engine all in the same place, so that makes it a lot simpler to understand. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love Unity. I use it for nearly every single one of my own personal projects. But if you're learning your very first game engine, I highly recommend you use Godot.